No way.
Obviously, you know who you are, but sometimes we just need validation. I need some people to validate me sometimes because I'm struggling internally. And so, you know, that little, hey, I know what you are.
Yes.
It's very important.
Okay, so it's somebody else validating the fact that you're colored.
Yes.
That is the thing.
Yes.
And
A
this
little bit.
is actually where you belong.
Yeah, it sounds
That is
silly
a-
when you say it back, but yes.
No, it doesn't sound silly. It is how you feel.
Yes.
It's how you feel. Do you feel the same way? Ra?
I feel the exact same way. And when you're saying that, like, okay, to me, like, it kind of it boggles my mind when you say it, because I think that you could easily look more colored than I think the three of than me and Crystal.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you're saying that to me, then I'm looking at myself. I'm like, so I must look wild, saying I'm a color. I'm from Africa, and then I've got all these sharp features and straight hair like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like envious of you that you look more colored than and me not, because I can tell you right now, I get Indian all the time, and I get Arab all the time, and I get Spanish every now and then, but I've never got mixed race. I think maybe one time, I think when I had dreadlocks, somebody asked me one time, they're like, oh, like you're mixed, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm mixed. I'm mixed as fuck.
Well, have you seen my tattoo of Africa?
And then, and as you could tell, like out of all places, I've put this on my neck, and this is obviously symbolizing something, because I'm like, no, like you better know where I am from.
Recognize that this is where I come from.
Yeah, and I think that like and I don't even think that like I've rarely had a moment where I feel like, oh, I should hide it, or I feel embarrassed, or anything like that, because I feel like I can be like, you could look at my relatives, and I've got relatives that are so black, and who have got curly hair, who have got those African features, who you'd never think that are related to me, but they are. And so that is a part of who I am. And then also I got relatives that look Indian as well. So I could also say the same thing too, and be like, oh, like even if someone were to say, oh, how do I know what a curry tastes like? I'll be like, hey, look at my cousin here, looking like that. You mean what? So I don't even know why. It's just to say, rant over for a second.
I appreciate what you're saying because it is. If you perceive me to look more colored, then it would be like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? But I have the same. Like, I feel like my sibling is more brown. My sister has curlier hair. Like, she looks. It's also dumb that we're doing this, because it's like you look. Yeah. Why do we do that? Why is that a thing? Because we are mixed race, so we're all gonna come out looking different and confused, and not in a bad way. It's just what happens when you
It's genetics.
are a multi. Yeah, exactly. We should not do that, because we have the same parents. My sister is brown, and I am not brown. But do you know, like, we look completely different, but our genetic pot is the same.
So it's interesting that you should talk about that in terms of what we as coloured South Africans refer to as complexion, which is basically the colour of your skin, the degrees of brownness in it. Because the other young woman who I invited to this podcast is so much lighter skin than all of us here, and green eyes. And the minute I looked at her, I knew she's my people. And she also experiences that alienation that you guys are describing here. And she says, what she told me was that she would go up to the white children at school and try to integrate with them, and they'd say, no, you don't belong here. Then she go to the black people, and they'd say, no, you don't belong here because you're not black enough. So there's that's going on. And it's don't you think it's a pity that in 2023 we are still hung up over the levels of the shades of our skin.
Yeah.
That at the end of it all, we are just people.
It is a pity. And I'm definitely, summertime for me is like, I am going to get the brownest I possibly can so everyone knows I'm a brown person.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I feel it's so important. I don't understand why, but I just need to look like the brown human so everyone can see me as this person from Africa. Like, I am from there, I promise. Maybe I don't sound like it. Yeah. Is she also not from, did she grow up out of South Africa?
Also came as a very young child.
So it must be the immigrant thing. It has to be the fact that I have moved away from being surrounded by my people. And so I have this disconnect.
But Raul, do you find, or do you think that your level of disconnect is greater or the same as Ray's?
I don't know. I mean, like, I know I've got a lot of passion for it because I feel like I deal with it a lot. And it could just be so many different things throughout the day that can trigger my thoughts and be like, why don't I look like how I maybe feel? Or why don't I look like the rest of my family members? Or, you know what I mean? So I don't know, but I know I think about it a lot. And I think that, like, you would have thought that maybe over time, like, I would have, like, I mean, I'm like 37 years old now. Like, you know, I shouldn't probably be thinking this or not caring about such a thing of, like, but I care a lot about it because it's my makeup. It's who I am. It's who I present as soon as I walk outside this door. It's the first thing that people see rather than what they hear. So, and I have to back it up every single time because people, they want to know or they make assumptions. So I have to have already had a solution to the problem by explaining to them what my dialogue is ready. Yeah. I'm like, this is what it is. Bam, 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 bam. Don't ask more questions. It's done. It's over. Because I don't want it. Oh, but your nose is a little long. Oh, okay. I can't stand that. Don't look. Just from what I've told you, let's just keep it at that. And next subject, please. Literally.
As bad as that?
Yeah.
Is it the feeling is as bad as that?
I think I can't remember the words of your question properly, but I think your identity crisis is worse than mine because I think about it, but I don't think I think about it as much as you do. I also grew up in New Zealand, which embraced different people and brown people in a different way than people do in Australia. I still really struggle being here and everything just being very white. And so you just being a brown human, let alone a colored human with your own identity issues, would just be way hectic, like way worse than my discomfort or my internal turmoil would be, because the people here are very different with other cultures.
For sure. And I think you're being nice by saying different instead of just saying they racist as hell in this place. Perth is very racist because it's a big town. It's just a big country town. So they've just got this mind frame about anybody that doesn't look white, they're going to get treated like shit. And I know that growing up in the 90s and going to school in the 90s, I can tell you I got called all sorts of things.
I never, not once got called any kind of derogatory name, term. No one ever was like, oh my gosh, this brown person. Like, I never experienced that once in New Zealand, like ever. As soon as we got here, I was like, whoa, I am brown and there's like no one around me at all.
from like many years ago when I brought it up with my dad about like how people are racist or whatever, like, you know, all that kind of stuff. He kind of said, well, we left we left a country where they were talking about race. We didn't want to come to another country and that still being a thing. So for them, they're like, they just didn't want that to be, you know, a part of their new life living in Australia. So now it was just easier just to like let it go.
It's interesting that none of your Black South African heritage manifests. And having your parents having done their DNA, I know there's a fair amount of Southern Bantu in you.
Mm-hmm.
They're Senegalese from your great-grandfather, my grandfather. Yeah, and it's not manifested in the way you appear.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're looking at, let's ask that question, if you look at a white person, can you tell what their heritage is? Because many South African so-called whites are not 100% white. Yeah. And then the question comes back to, what does it matter?
But
yeah.
Sorry. I don't know many white people outside of people that are white in Europe that, this might sound hectic, but like have a culture. Mm-hmm. So like Italian people have a culture, Greek people have a culture, Spanish people have a culture, but like white people in New Zealand, there's not like a
thing that defines them?
Yes, there isn't a thing that defines them. So I don't feel like they feel how we feel about culture and how we value culture and how I value all the things that come under culture. So it's not a priority for them, so they don't care about it. Yes. I value that. I value my community. I value looking like the people around me. I value the food and the music and like all of that stuff. So for me, it is important. For them, if that's not a priority, of course they don't care that they don't look like Sally down the road.
I mean, do you say coloured South Africans have culture?
Yes.
Fantastic, because many South Africans of black, Indian and white persuasion will tell you we don't. Well, so tell me, what are the elements of the culture you identify with as being as South African coloured?
Okay. I think this is a hard question because the differentiation between traditions and culture are something that I am currently trying to figure out, because I have this discussion.
Our traditions are part of our cultures.
Okay, beautiful. So, okay, fair. The food that we eat, the music that we listen to, like there's specifically coloured music. It's not from, I guess we've kind of picked an...
Thank you. We've picked and chosen.
We have. We've picked and, yes.
The contributing races to which we belong.
But I still feel like the combination is still unique to us.
Correct.
But yes, we have picked and chosen from, yes.
Okay, so Ra, let me ask you, Ra, because you've attended a whole lot more coloured functions than Ray has, right? Mm-hmm. So what do they do at weddings? What do coloured people do at weddings?
They get very drunk.
And what else?
They eat a lot of food.
And what else?
They complain about the food.
That happens in most cultures. And what else?
And they complain about the music too.
Do they do a thing called a wedding march?
They do a wedding march, yes.
Their wedding march is unique to coloured culture.
Okay, can you explain the wedding march?
Okay, so in the wedding march, a couple whose marriage is viewed as a good example of what a marriage should be would be asked by the bridal couple to lead a wedding march. And the two of them would stand in front of the bride and groom, who would have selected a piece of music. The bride and groom would stand behind this couple, ladies on one side, men on one side, and then they would proceed to dance. And all other married couples would then join the bridal party, and the mothers and fathers of the bride and the rest of the community who is married would then join and dance in this wedding march to symbolize their entrance as a married couple into the fellowship of married couples, as it were. Are you grown up now? You're big now. You can join this lot of people that have committed to each other, kind of a thing. So that's the symbolism of a wedding march. Then what happens at a funeral, a colored funeral? They eat a lot, they drink a lot, yes. They complain about the food and drink. What else? Most times after colored funerals, close friends and family of the deceased will gather to drink and have the best reminiscence of the deceased person.
For sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
In Australia, you guys call it a wake. Okay? The wake comes from an Irish term. That's not what the Irish would term a wake. That's what you coloured South Africans in Australia call a wake. A wake is, in the original Irish term, is when you sit with the deceased before he or she is buried. So you don't leave the body alone. Somebody stays awake to accompany the deceased until they're buried. Okay. Just saying. So, yes, but in South Africa, in Johannesburg, among the Afrikaans, predominantly Afrikaans-speaking South Africans, they call it an after tears, this party. And let me say, I've attended some after tears that are more festive than weddings. And then that same music that you guys hear all the way here in Australia is played. That same food that all you people in Australia eat is eaten. The same drinks obviously are drunk. The same uncles that are getting faulty and out of hand are getting faulty and out of hand. And they're after tears. You know what I'm saying, right? Okay, then the other thing about culture is language. And we have a language called slang, right? So if you're walking down the street and somebody talks to you in slang in Australia, would you be able to understand that? Up to a point.
If an Australian was to speak.
A South African Australian
Yeah.
had to speak in slang to you.
Oh, then I would understand, yeah.
You would understand, would you?
Because my dad always does
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
You would understand because your dad
my
speaks.
dad, yeah.
There you go. So can you understand that you haven't been like costed of that much?
I hear you. I don't like what you're saying, but I hear you. No,
Yeah. No, that's fair enough. But in my view, it's important to address those feelings of alienation. It's important to, because how would you then contribute to society if you don't know which society you belong to? So is your contribution going to be towards Australia at large, or is your contribution, because oftentimes you will find yourself gravitating towards your home people, this is my initial community. Now you'll have your initial community, you have your church community, you'll have your family, and then you'll have your province, or what you guys call a state, we call a province, and then Australia as a whole. So where are you going to peg your contribution, I think then becomes important. I see a lot of South African Aussies are still contributing to things that are going on in South Africa. So they will raise funds in Australia and send the money home to South Africa to deal with issues there, which is great because it means that they still identify very strongly with those people and want to obviously improve their lives. So that's the question for you, and maybe a psychologist and maybe a social worker that understands culture a little bit more than I do, as to where do you go to from there in your contribution to society?
Okay. I think before I answer what you just said, I think it is important for us specifically to acknowledge when we are feeling that disconnect, to remind ourselves of the things that we do have. Because I think we can get away with the fairies with our we ruminate. So you start with one thought and you're like, I don't look like this, I don't talk like this, I'm not born there, and then we just go on and on and on and on. But there is a lot that we do have, and that is mine. I do identify with enough to know that I am a coloured person, and I need to remind myself of that more. And I think you do too, because it is mine. I just need to be a big girl and
Own it.
yeah, and own it. I have the right to be this person. I am this person, and so I need to walk the walk, and you need to walk the walk, because it is mine. No one can take it away from me. They shouldn't take it away from me, and I need to be okay with that. So we need to practice that, because it's not nice to not feel like I know and I'm solid in who I am. I don't know how to answer that other question.
That's cool.
That was good.
That's a very good
That was-
realization that you
Yeah.
come to there.
Oh, look who's
Because-
growing on a podcast. Wow.
But that's also, it's taking ownership for your own feelings, and that is so important, so emotionally mature. And there are many people that are way older than you that haven't adopted that yet, sadly for them. Yeah, and maybe, like I'm saying, a psychologist and a social worker would be able to explain a little bit more in detail why there is that divide. And then as a coach, I could help you to facilitate, that growth towards that inclusiveness.
I think that plays a part in my identity crisis is that I didn't have, I saw my grandparents, I talked to my grandparents, but I did not have a community around me that was my community. I plonked myself into Maori culture. I was fully immersed. I did kapahaka. I could not have been more immersed in someone else's culture. And I think that was because I didn't have my own. I needed to piggyback onto this because I love it. I want to belong. I think belonging is so important. And so that's what I did. I belonged as much as I physically could because I am not Maori, and so I can't do everything or completely put myself into the box. But I did it to the most extreme I could because I really needed that community. I think that's for me the most important part of my life and living is having a strong community around you of people that are like you, that support you, that understand you. And I feel like you are more, which is weird, you are more coloured than I am, with how I see you, how I interact with you, because you ooze coloured culture more than most people do. The way you talk, your slang, your music, obviously you have other, additions, but you are very coloured human.
Where can we go from now, from having these discussions about, these feelings of identity and what they mean to each and every one of us, the understanding of what a braino is, a coloured person is in South Africa, and now identifying that there's changes that we can make within ourselves from just noticing what we already have around us and what we've already got built in us. Where can we go from now? You as a life coach and having those abilities to be able to work with people that are having these fluctuation of thoughts and stuff like that. What can you advise us?
For me, half the battle is won just when you acknowledge that there is a problem. All right. And then to stop and identify each of those feelings when they happen. And possibly journaling, just say, oh, today I'm feeling a little bit alienated from my community, or I'm feeling down and I ascribe it to this. But in journaling, you actually putting your thoughts down on a piece of paper that you can revisit, because it was like you were saying earlier, your head gets into a thing and it just extrapolates into all different directions, and you just going out for leather, and at the end of it all, what am I actually thinking about here? Whereas if you put it into, you reduce it to writing, you can go back, revisit it, and say, this is where I was on that day, and I can grow from this experience because I did X and Y differently afterwards. I thought this, I did this, and now I think differently. So that is the easiest way that I can think of, just off the top of my head, to coming to grips with thoughts that seem to be maverick and having thoughts having a mind of their own. No pun intended. Yeah. Does that help? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've also just created a new coaching tool, which is the journaling. The journaling people, just journal in one book, but just from the perspective of something that really makes you feel really bad and dark, have a separate book. So that feeling that is so bad that it's making, or that thought that's making you feel so bad, you take it and you put it in a book that is you're going to tear it out when you're done, and you are going to destroy it, and you're going to speak to it and say, well, look, enough already. This feeling it's not serving my best interest, who I am and who I want to grow into. So burn it and release the thought. And then the beauty, because in that thinking where the mind is all over the place, there are going to be some pretty beautiful thoughts. And they would be thoughts that you want to keep, and maybe when you're 80 one day, look at it and say, yes, I did think that. Now that I have blue hair, it doesn't matter, And those you could put in a separate, beautiful book with maybe pretty cover or something. This is your happy space. And you write that thought and you just hold on to it, because that is a happy thought that's going to make you happy one day when you're feeling a little bit blue.
Yeah.
And so you separate them.
Yeah, that sounds very helpful. I think, we haven't done anything to try and resolve how we're feeling. So I'm excited to try and move forward and be strong in my identity and be prideful, because I should be prideful. I deserve to be prideful. Thank you.
That actually was not a session about knowing what a braino is about. It's actually a psychology session. And we needed it. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. I hope that you guys learned so much. We have got a lot more to unpack, and I think you're going to learn a lot about being a coloured South African, also identity and understanding your own truths and who you are and what you bring to what are contributing factors or whatever that you bring to your own community. And I'm excited to see what else that we can discuss and all that kind of fun stuff.
Yes.
But thank you guys so much.
Thank you.